So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forward. So, this afternoon, I'm delighted that we have with us Helen Underwood of Underwood Training. So, Helen, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Underwood Training, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Thanks so much, Chris. So I'm Helen Underwood from the very imaginatively named Underwood Training First Aid, as you can tell. I actually used to be a physiotherapist working primarily in intensive care and paediatrics.
Wow.
And I did that for about 11 years. Had a few little issues with allergies and such like. So I actually ran away and career changed. Not the way you're thinking. I actually went to Scotland for a year and did outdoor pursuits instructor training.
Oh,
And
wow.
there that one of the assessors, one of the modules said, Helen, have you thought about first aid training with your background? And the rest, as they say, is history. So I now head up my own company. I'm incorporated. I have a small number of employees who work alongside me to process the courses and also to deliver the training. And our big thing is delivering people-centered first aid training that's tailored to the needs of the client. So if you work very much in an outdoor environment, we'll have an outdoor slant on it. The last 2 days, I was just at a primary school for some inset days, teaching paediatric first aid there. I also teach the mainstream courses, of course, first aid at work, emergency first aid at work, some more niche things with specialised sports as well. First aid for parents is a real passion of mine, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later. And basically, if it's first aid, we do it. More recently, I've also been doing first aid for mental health because, of course, our mental health and well-being is equally as important as our physical health as well.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you were growing up, is this the sort of thing you foresaw, or did you have other things planned at that point, Helen?
You mean from the career change?
Yeah. Just are you in the role that you always foresaw yourself? But
No. I mean, when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a digger driver, believe it or not. That
oh,
was
brilliant.
my real ambition. And then it moved on to marine biologist, and my mum sort of steered me towards physiotherapy because she thought that would be a far better career. Uh, but no, it's not the role that I saw myself ending up in by any means. But it's a very weird and wonderful route. All sports people need first aid, or their coaching tickets aren't
Yeah.
valid. And
Yes.
obviously, there's a higher risk of accidents with people doing more adventurous activities.
Yeah.
But in terms of my NHS background, if I hadn't done the things that I had done, I don't believe I could teach as knowledgeably as I do
Yeah.
on the different courses. There's not a single thing I teach in first aid that I haven't dealt with in real life at some
Yeah.
point in my hospital career. So I think that's a really strong place to start from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, thinking about the career change coming into the training, what since you as you've grown the business, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome to build Underwood Training?
That's an interesting question. I think there's been a few challenges along the way. One of them is moving from being a clinical person in the NHS into a business owner because
Yeah.
it's a very different skill set. Having to actually do the HR side of things and the accounting side of things and all the extra things that go with running a business. I'm still small enough that I do an awful lot of those things,
Yes.
unlike some of the bigger, larger companies who are lucky enough to have a person in each post.
Yes.
So that's definitely been a challenge juggling that. Client expectations, particularly as I'm now a mum as well. So my daughter's now 8 going on 9.
Brilliant.
The school holiday juggle is a very real thing.
Yes.
But I'm very lucky because it's my own business. I can just
Yeah.
wind work down when I've not got the childcare. So that is a real privilege to be able to
Yeah.
do that and spend time with her. At an age when she still wants to spend time with us, because I'm sure that'll change as she
Yes.
gets older.
Very so.
So they've been two really big challenges. And then the other obvious one's been COVID,
Yeah.
navigating through COVID, which I'm sure that everybody you interview must flag up as a huge challenge.
Yes, is the answer. It occasionally we have the odd business that it was, the exact opposite. It was the opportunity and it was the kickstart of various things. Interesting. We've interviewed a few people that actually started in COVID, which was interesting too. So they actually didn't really know from a business perspective a pre-COVID world, which again is interesting. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, but very very few businesses haven't had that as one of their major challenges, and obviously other things that go on. And from the challenges or any other source, what are the biggest things you've learned about growing a business? Kind of.
Well, COVID was really interesting because we had to move a lot of things virtually as best as we could.
Yes.
But we've got requirements from the Health and Safety Executive and also Ofqual awarding bodies about what we can and can't do with qualifications.
Yeah.
So over COVID, some of them moved to be part in person and part virtual
Yeah.
using mediums such as Zoom. But I've recently been working and learning very much really steep tech learning curve to create things that are virtual. So I did a virtual annual refresher because that's not a legal requirement, but a nice to have
Yeah.
because clients wanted that. St Gemma's Hospice is one of my clients. I do the resuscitation training for their health care professional staff. And over COVID, they needed to go completely distanced because of the high risk for their patient group, of
Of
course.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
So for them, and in fact, they were the first ones I did it with, we actually created a whole video training package so that they could be completely distanced. I'm really excited. We're finally back to face, and I'm getting back in there regularly working with the staff on physical skills now. But
Brilliant.
good 2.5 years that they were using the virtual package.
Yeah.
So that's allowing me to develop other things. So at the moment, I'm working on a virtual package first aid for parents and carers. I
Right.
think that's a really huge need. It was impossible after COVID to go into people's homes.
Yeah.
And, now I've got my daughter. I'm not wanting to spend lots of evenings going and working with people. I'd love to be able to them to do it in their own time and in little bite-sized bits as well, Chris. I
Yes.
think that's particularly helpful.
Yes.
There's also was a white paper came out for Department of Education over PHSE curriculum for children, and that's got a first aid component to it as well. So I'm working on a package for school staff to enable them to facilitate that with children.
Yeah.
I think teachers actually have an awful raw deal in that the syllabuses keep changing and the workload keeps piling on, but yet there isn't the funding and the resources for them to feel confident in teaching things such as first aid.
Yes.
I want to equip them to do that with our young people.
Yeah.
So yeah, virtual learning curve on tech, I think, has been the really big thing that's come out of it.
Yeah, yes, and I think that that I've seen that across lots of that use of tech and the fact that and also I think post COVID is sort of using the tech side at the right point. A lot of people wanted to get back together and wanted to have meetings or have face to face or in physical training. But as you mentioned, there is a place for the tech side, like the refreshers, like things that because again going back to this whole work-life balance, people that used to travel sort of an hour, 2 hours for a meeting, or and for a half an hour, 1 hour meeting, it seems crazy when most of the content of most forms of meeting can be delivered pretty much just as well, but in a format like this.
Absolutely. I mean, for physical first aid, I think it's much more beneficial to do it in
I
person.
would imagine
It's a
so.
large
Yes.
part of it you need to.
Yes.
But for the mental health first aid, it works in
Yes.
person and it works virtually, although it feels like a very different course to teach it when you do it
Yes.
in these different ways.
Yes.
And there's different things you can do for breakouts using the different mediums. So it's knowing what works. But I do love that if we go virtual, it lets people from further afield come
Yeah.
and experience training with us as well. So there are pros and cons,
Yeah.
definitely.
Brilliant. And what sort of, I mean, you talked about different clients. What sort of clients do you typically work with, and what makes a great client for you?
That's an interesting question because the answer is everybody, which
Yeah.
sounds really, really lame. But I really do believe that first aid is a life skill. You never know when you're going to need
Yeah.
to use it. We've got clients from hospitality, we've got clients from construction, from manufacturing, lots of clients from school environments and academies. We've got clients who run their own businesses. We've got sole traders. We've got personal trainers. We've got outdoor workers who work on
Yes.
nature reserves and things like that. We literally can work with absolutely anybody and
Brilliant.
everybody. And we do try really hard at Underwood Training to actually tailor the course to a client so that if we've got people, even on an open course, we'll find out, who they are, where they work, what their background is, and then we'll try and tailor the scenarios to make the training feel relevant to them
Yeah.
in the working environment. And I think that's a real strength that we have.
Brilliant, brilliant. And you probably we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who that had the biggest influence on you?
I think the biggest coaches ever in terms of my life and my experience actually has to be my really good friend Claire. She's absolutely amazing.
Brilliant,
If ever I've got a conundrum and my head's doing some little loopy loops on something, as I call it, I can bounce off her really well. And
brilliant.
it's amazing, quite often I've got the answers, I just haven't seen them.
Yeah,
You know, I don't see the wood for the trees, as they say.
absolutely.
And she's just really good at phrasing things and making me think and put it
Brilliant.
in the right way. So although I've done some odd bits over the years, I'd actually say Claire's got to be the most amazing person for me
Wonderful.
in terms of coaching.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and for me, the definition of coaching is drawing it out of the other. Well, in
Mm.
fact, my first day at training as to be a coach many years ago, I was told that the root of the word education is educare, which means to draw out, which I find really interesting because traditional education is typically, I would suggest, a pushing in process of pushing education, knowledge in, whereas and I think it was so relevant to coaching, which is drawing out of the individual stuff they probably already know, and just helping people get their thoughts in line so that they've got their own way forward and action plan. Uh,
100%.
Brilliant. And through running your business and through life in general, again, have you are there any favourite quotes or sayings that you catch yourself using, especially with regard to business or success?
Yeah, there are two things that spring to mind. The first is progress, not perfection.
Yeah, great.
Trying to get something absolutely spot on before you get it out, whether it's a newsletter or working on the virtual projects. I could be there forever and never
Yeah,
get things live because there's always something you could tweak. So, just accepting that sometimes things are enough, and the progress is amazing that where you've got to. So
brilliant.
that's the main one. The other one, which comes from my good friend Claire, is it's just a thing. Sometimes life happens. Sometimes there just isn't enough hours in the day. Something's cropped up. There's a little spanner in the
Brilliant.
works. You haven't got through the to-do list. It's just a thing.
Yeah,
It'll wait. It'll pass. It's just a thing.
absolutely. I think one thing I picked up from Tony Robbins, which I really like it, and he says if it won't matter in 5 years' time, it doesn't matter now.
I like that. It's great.
Because it just takes a lot, just a whole raft of things that seem important right now, but they're not going to. Really, it's not.
Absolutely.
Won't even remember them in a year probably, but no, wonderful. And in terms of learning, what have you learned about yourself throughout your journey so far? Would you say?
Um, I've learned a lot about myself, and I think I'm still learning, which is a great thing.
Brilliant.
I've learned that I am someone who can do and can overcome. I'm actually
Great.
incredibly dyslexic. And I wasn't discovered to be dyslexic till I was at university.
Oh
Um,
wow.
when I was doing my A levels, one of my teachers told me I wouldn't get the grades to get to university, and I decided to prove her wrong because I'm bloody minded at
Brilliant.
times. So
Brilliant.
I worked my socks off. I got to university, doing amazing on my practical assessments, but almost failed my writtens, and that's when it was picked up. And I think now and then the imposter syndrome has raised a head when I've doubted my abilities in things. And actually, I've come an amazing long way. I've come out of the NHS. I've started a business. I'm now employing people. I'm teaching loads of people to save lives, which is an amazing privilege.
Yep.
I regularly get people get in touch and let me know the impact it's had, which is
Wonderful.
absolutely phenomenal and so humbling when people
Yeah.
choose to get back in touch and let you know that the difference you've made. So indirectly, I know I've saved a number of lives
Yes.
and made a huge
Wonderful.
difference to a whole load more. And it's just such a privilege to be able to do that. It really is.
Yeah.
Um, I'm learning that actually, although the buck stops here because I own the business, actually it's just a thing. And if things are a bit much, if I'm have a bout of illness or something, actually it's okay to say no. It's
Yeah.
okay to press pause. It's okay to shunt something to someone
Definitely.
else and delegate. Whereas
Definitely.
I think that was something I used to find very hard to do. I
Yeah.
think I'm getting a lot better at it. So I think I've learned a lot about myself. I'm sure there's many more things I will learn.
Brilliant, wonderful, great, so great things there. And looking forwards now, what does the future look like for for you in the business, and what are what are some of the challenges you might face, if any?
Well, I've actually just literally swapped to a different awarding organisation for some of our qualifications. So
Right,
the big challenge at the moment is changing paperwork trails and bits and
right, yeah,
pieces,
yeah,
which is always fun and games. Because first aid used to be through HSE approvals, and then it moved towards Ofqual or other routes. So we've got
yeah,
various routes we use for different qualifications. So that's a little bit of a challenge. Um, with the staff team, I do termly, 'cause we tend to work on school terms roughly. It's how things tend to go with the
right,
business. A lot of our clients have staff with employees who've got children. So
yeah,
of course we've got less demand in the school holidays, which is a real benefit for me with the small person in tow.
yes,
And some of my other team also have children or are married to teachers. So, they want the time off as well. So we'll do termly training. So we'll do a big
right,
training in September, which I need to prepare for to get everyone up to speed with the new processes. Other challenges, I think we'll be looking to grow the team in the next year. I
yep,
think we're starting to get a little bit busier, and I'd like to not quite work so many hours. I think it's just from a personal point of view to have a little bit more time to have fun and live a little more rather than working on the business. So yeah, I think they're the
absolutely
next challenges.
brilliant. Yeah, and very wise. Not just is it a nice to have, if you like, more time. But if we don't have more than enough time, then we tend to be the barrier to growth of a business. That's the thing that happens. If you don't have more than enough time to work on the things that need to be worked on, then yeah, we hold it back. So it is a virtuous thing to do in more than one way, I think. And you mentioned about the book stopping with the business owner. It is something I say to many people I work with, is that ultimately the book stops with us until maybe we have somebody else for whom it stops for in the future. That's the downside in many ways. The upside is we get to choose exactly how it is. So we get to
Absolutely.
choose how we run it, what the hours we work, when we want to come on or off, or slow down or pause, as you said, and that's the massive benefit, I think, of having our own business. We can choose. Our business can look completely different to any other business that exists. Just because that's the benefit we get. So it can be really, really, really personal. And Helen, I'm keen to know what you would say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now.
It's a great thing to do, and there's pros and cons. So your best thing to do is to work out where your niche is, what your
Yeah,
market is, what
great,
you want to do, because that's a good
brilliant.
start point. And then when you've worked that out, I think you need to make some pros and cons about the pros of going solo and the cons, as it were. As I
Yep,
said, the buck stops with us. So there's a whole load of other things I don't
yes,
think people always appreciate that go with running a business.
no, I agree.
So that's to take into consideration as well. But I think if you believe in yourself, I think you can do it. That's the bottom line. But
Brilliant,
get everything down on paper, and maybe they need to meet up with someone like yourself and just have a bounce of ideas around, or a really good friend like my friend Claire, and
brilliant.
just bounce the ideas and try and work out a little more of the nitty gritty before you
Yeah,
dive in.
yeah. Just try and just look around it, work around it, just see, are there any potential clear challenges that we can then mitigate before as we start. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means we need to be wary, I think. Um, Wonderful. And if you started your business again, is there anything significant that you might do differently, do you think?
I think I found an amazing HR person who's absolutely wonderful, who I'd just buy in as and when I need.
Brilliant.
And I think I would have loved her from the beginning. She would have
Great.
been absolutely fantastic. Just because I'm not an expert in things like contracts of employment or anything like
Yeah.
that. So just having someone you can go, right, I need to do this, and please sort it out, would be absolutely amazing. So I think having a bit more support on the HR to start with
Yeah.
would have been really good at the point of employing people.
Yeah.
Um, and I really did fall into my business. So it was through increasing latex allergies from breathing in powdered latex dust, working on intensive care,
Oh,
that
goodness.
forced me to career change. So that made me do
Yeah.
the outdoor instructor year course in
Yeah.
Scotland. And from that, I went into the coaching, but discovered that actually it's bit work. You maybe get paid for 4 hours out of an 8-hour day because you're paid for the actual hours you're coaching.
Yes, that makes
Bit
sense.
rubbish,
Yeah,
with big gaps and things. So I then had to train as a teaching qualification to be able to move into first aid with the way
yeah,
that it's moved at the time I went into it. So I got my qualified teacher, various qualifications through the way. All with the dyslexia in the background. So I've done really,
amazing.
really well. So it was a big sort of hoop of jumping and
Yeah,
morphing through from physiotherapy to run away, do outdoor pursuits and passions with outdoor adventurous stuff to
brilliant,
rein it back in and moving towards teaching first aid. So
brilliant.
it was a real metamorphosis, and it wasn't really planned, but I
Yeah,
think planning it would have maybe made things a little bit smoother at some point. So yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And um, finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
An 18-year-old me, wherever life leads, you've got it. You'll make it. You'll be okay. You've got it.
Nice. Like it. Absolutely brilliant. It's quite funny. It's an interesting question because a lot of people might say, or some people might say, there's nothing you could tell an 18-year-old anyway. But if they would listen, then those sorts of things. I think the biggest challenge a lot, most 18-year-olds, including myself, have had, and probably even more nowadays, is that anxiety and that worry about things. So that sort of advice would be wonderful.
Right. Thank you.
Well, it's been fascinating to talk to you now, and it'd be really great to come back in another 6 to 12 months and just catch up with the progress. Obviously, you're going through that new phase of recruiting and building a team, which comes with its own set of learning. So it'd be great to come back and learn from you about how that's been. But for now, anyone interested in contacting you or Underwood Training, what would be the best way to do that?
There's a number of ways you can do it. So the website's the obvious one, which is www.underwood-training.co.uk. And
Brilliant,
you can see all the open courses on there. And as of this spring, which is really exciting, you can now actually book online for the open courses, which is really handy over the school holidays, which is amazing.
brilliant. Yep,
If people want a group course, then they can get in touch again through the website or drop us an email, give us a call. Again, the contact details are on the website, or we can put them on the thing that you're sending out if you want to. And get in touch. Just thank you for bearing with us during school holidays when we might just be a little bit slower than usual, just to get back to you as our small people demand attention.
absolutely bang on. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been lovely catching up.
Thanks, Helen.